Hey everyone, this is Howie Fisher with Fisher's Flies. Thanks for checking in. This is episode 10 of my Fulling Mill 2025 catalog series, and this is Wayne Haslow's Milk Magic. This is a fly used in the Seychelles, which is a country in the Indian Ocean that's, I believe, part of Africa. And this is a fly that is used for milkfish, which if you've never looked one up, they look like a lot of fun. I'm using an SA 280 size 1 from Ahrex. You could go heavier. It sounds like that is preferred. The heavier the better. For the thread, I'm using 0.1 mono thread from Veevus. And I'm just going to get started a little bit behind my hook eye here to give myself a little bit of extra room to finish the fly. The majority of this fly is ram's wool, but we're going to get started with some calf tail. My understanding is this is to kind of prop up the rest of the fly. So I'm going to start with white calf tail, as Wayne does. Just a small clump. And you're going to cut this and prep this just like you normally would with calf tail. Cut a small piece off your tail. Pull out all the shorts and the longs and any under fur. You always want, obviously, probably about twice of what you are thinking you're going to end up with, because you'll probably pull out half of what you cut off in the short fibers. So I'm going to tie this on what is technically the bottom of the hook, so between the hook shank and the gap. And you want to tie it directly on top, again, so that it essentially props up the rest of the fly. And I'm going to do the same thing with some Chartreuse calf tail. Again, I'm going to cut off a small piece, prep the fibers, and tie it on top. This fly is essentially designed to look like algae. Milkfish are primarily herbivores from the research that I've done. They will eat some small crustaceans and shrimp, it sounds like. But this fly is used when these milkfish are in the lagoons and or feeding on algae lines in the open water. So again, I'm going to tie this directly on top of the hook shank, like I did with the small white piece. And just want to make sure that those fibers are split evenly on either side of the fly, or the hook, I should say. So again, I'm using ram's wool for the majority of this fly, and Chartreuse. The specific clump of ram's wool is from Hareline. And I'm going to prep this pretty similar to the calf tail. So I'm going to cut off a decent chunk of this ram's wool. I will note that after talking to a couple guys at the New Jersey Fly Show that are either from the Seychelles or fish the Seychelles or have before, they did note that the way that I tied this fly was just a little dense. They said to just thin down the amount of ram's wool that you use. You don't want it to be sparse, but you don't want it to be too thick like I made it here. And they said that specifically you want the fly to sink slowly. They kind of said that if you put too much ram's wool on it, it will stay closer to the surface or just sinks very, very slow. So again, I'm going to take a clump of ram's wool that I've pulled all the shorts out of and tie it again directly on top of the hook shank in the same fashion as the two pieces of calf tail. Next, I'm going to grab some Crystal Flash in Pearl. And I'm going to grab two pieces, double it over, and tie it again on top of the hook shank. And this will turn into 4. If you want to see the original of this video, Wayne Hasleau does have a video online as well. Next, after I tie this Crystal Flash in, I'm going to use some more ram's wool. This is the original process, but again, as I mentioned, just thin out both clumps a little bit more than you see I have here. the way that this fly is tied is ram's wool, crystal flash, and then another piece of ram's wool. But again, just thin it out a little bit. You can also use some tape rising scissors afterwards if you end up with too much on there. On this second clump, I'm going to make sure to use pull my fibers a little bit closer so you can see I'm ending up with a larger chunk over the hook eye, and this is because I want kind of the wavy fibers of the ram's wool and to help it look a little bit more like natural algae. Once I have that cut off and cleaned up, then I'm going to move on to the next part of the fly. At this point, this fly is almost done. In the video and the comments that I saw from Wayne Hasleau's original video, he said you could probably essentially fish this fly as is, but he likes to add these next 2 steps on, or 3 steps on, for a little bit of added enticement. So I'm adding ice dub in tan, and again, this is another thing that Wayne specifically adds. He talks about this fly kind of being a bit of a smorgasbord for milkfish when they're in the scenario or situation where you use this specific fly. And after I add that tan ice dub, I'm adding ultra chenille and micro. You could probably use standard as well. I'm going to tie this on just the tip, and I'm going to take 2 or 3 wraps backwards. You don't want to cover up too much of that ice dub. And then I'm going to take 2 or 3 wraps forward again. You want to use a decent amount of tension so that doesn't slip forwards or backwards. Once I've come back to my tie-in point, I'm going to snip it off. This is designed essentially to look like an egg sac of a shrimp, according to Wayne. And then lastly, I'm finishing off the fly with some more crystal flash, but this is specifically in UV blue. This is designed to mimic what is called a cocopod. That's according to Wayne. But I'm going to do the same thing that I did. I'm actually going to double this over. I'm going to take a single piece and double it over. And I'm going to wrap this forward a little bit and backwards to build up a little blue, almost hot spot, if you will. And the reason why I'm doubling it over is because it helps the blue to shine through a little bit more. Once I've got it where I want it, then I will tie off the excess and snip it off. And this fly is done. I'm going to whip finish, and then I'll add just a drop of Solarez bone dry as well to make sure that this isn't going to fall apart. After tying some of these flies up, they're really fun to tie. They're different. They're a little bit of a challenge, not necessarily difficult, but just different. And hopefully one day I'll be able to fish for milkfish. I'll add them to my bucket list for sure, but getting to the middle of the Indian Ocean, I'm sure, is not cheap. But one day, maybe I'll be able to do that, and hopefully you will too. So I will say that one thing I am looking forward to is fishing this fly for grass carp, actually, as it's designed to imitate algae mostly. So tie them up, fish them. Let me know what you think. And again, maybe you find another species here in the United States that will take these flies. Thanks for checking in.